and welcome to Sunrise Daily Live here on Channels Television. I'm Kayla Megwa. It is Christmas Eve, and you can see I'm all by myself, but that's just for now. We're going to be having a lot of people in the studio just so we can talk about a lot of things going on in the country. Welcome once again. Yesterday night, the president had his very first media chat. It was a lot of highs and lows, and that will form the first conversation that we have today. And of course, we heard him start that media chat with commiserating with those who lost their lives in the stampedes that occurred in parts of the country in the past few days. And of course, answering questions about, a lot of things going on in the economy that have been blamed for the situations that we're facing right now. But we'll get to that conversation in a bit. First of all, let's take you to Zamfara State, which is where our skyline is this morning. And why Zamfara State, you may ask? Well, they have just lifted the ban on mining in Zamfara, and it will be forming part of our conversations today as well. But there you have it on your screens, the Gusau Dam in Zamfara State. Now, it's one that we've talked about quite a bit, but one that we will not stop talking about. It's a reservoir, and that place is called the Sokoto River. It's just upstream from Gusau, the capital of Zamfara State, and it supplies water to the city and to neighboring communities. The dam actually collapsed in 2006, and it was a tragedy. 40 people died, and 500 homes were destroyed when that happened. I was September the 30th in 2006. There was a heavy flooding, when that dam collapsed. But the dam, it was insufficient initially to meet the local needs in times of drought, because drought is something that they have to deal with in that part of the country. At the time, I think in 2001, the then Zamfara State Governor, Ahmed Yerima, actually met the Minister of Water Resources at the time, that was Mohammed Bello Khalil, and told him that the dam could dry up soon. And at the time, he asked the federal government to transfer water from the Bakolori Dam to Gusau. So they said they were going to do it, but nothing had been done since then. And then of course, the collapse in 2006 didn't help matters, But money has been released for his rehabilitation. That was in 2007. 2.4 billion naira was released by the federal government to rehabilitate this dam. They were given it top priority at the time. They were going to do a lot of things. But at the time, I think afterwards, I think in 2010, some people even petitioned the EFCC, to investigate the former Zamfara State Governor Ahmed Yerima for mismanagement of the funds, they said, including a 1 billion naira loan for the Gusau Dam repairs. So it's a very contentious situation, and one that is still ongoing, by the way, but a lot of potential for this dam. And I think that's something that's pretty disappointing when we look around our country. A lot of potential for things to be done right. A lot of infrastructure created for things to work out. But in many ways, we find that these things do not work out, and which is why we bring up these situations from time to time. Just so if you live in a vicinity where you have infrastructure that isn't working, you can call out your lawmakers, call out your governor, and not to be disrespectful, but just so you can get some accountability. What's happened here? Was money released for this work? And if it has been released, where is the money now? And what about the purpose for which this thing was created? So those are some of the things that we have to think about as citizens, especially as we go into the new year. The president has been saying there's no more time for lamentations, it's time for action. All right, so citizen action. What's not working around you? And who's responsible for what's not working? It's time for us to bring you the papers, and we'll be back with more conversations after that. Stay with us.
Mr. President is on the front pages of all dailies this morning. Nigerian News Direct. Nigeria will attract foreign investors with new economic incentives. That's according to Tinubu. Says no regret whatsoever in removing subsidy. Hails Nigerians. Says patience towards economic hardship won't be taken for granted. eyes global partnerships, local investment to boost food security, economic growth. Stories on page 3. Blueprint newspaper, maiden presidential media chat. I'm ready to make concessions on tax reform bills. That's according to Tinubu. Says no regret over fuel subsidy removal. Expresses satisfaction with the military. Rules are probe. Insists cabinet size remains. Nigerian Tribune, tax reforms have come to stay. That's according to Tinubu. Says government open to consultations. I have no regrets removing subsidy, he insists. Rules are planned to reduce size of cabinet. Food crisis. We have no other choice but to improve production. 2,000 tractors coming to boost mechanized farming. All of that on page 2 of the paper. Daily Trust newspaper. No going back on tax reforms, according to Tinubu. Look at the front page of New Telegraph. Why I won't reduce size of my cabinets. By Tinubu, the story is on page 2. Says no regrets removing fuel subsidy, meeting nation's financial obligations without NNPCL limited ways and means. Minimum wage increase, fight against corruption. Insists tax reforms here to stay. Forecasts economic prosperity in 2025. Advises Nigerians to switch off light to manage electricity bills. Well, you hear it. Look at the front page of this Nigeria. I have no regret removing fuel subsidy, says Tinubu. At his inaugural media chat, President insists borrowing to fund budget deficit not criminal. Says deaths from food stampedes, errors by organizers. The front page of Business Day newspaper. Tinubu eyes reforms consolidation to drive growth. That's the Business Day newspaper this morning. And these are some of the dailies we have for you today.
Let's take a look at the Daily Trust newspaper today. Of course, the president's first media chat seems to be top of all the headlines this morning. But I'm going to look at this situation here when it comes to travelers. There's a picture in front of the Daily Trust newspaper, and it's travelers, at parks in Abuja and in Lagos. And of course, it's going to be a very busy Christmas. We've had busy days, so to speak, in preparation for the Christmas, with the highs and lows when it comes to transport fares. So a lot of conversations around the increase in fares this Yuletide, and we're seeing that. In fact, I think here on Channels TV, we have a bit we're doing today where we're going to be looking at how the motor parks and how shopping is going, just so we can see what our fellow Nigerians are going through this Yuletide. It may seem like all doom and gloom, but you know what they say about Nigerians? We are the most resilient people on the planet. But for some reason, we just have the ability to navigate these sorts of terrains. But protection is important. It's important to protect the Nigerian from whatever it is that whatever the charlatans really, because it also came up yesterday in the presidential chat. There are people in between who make sure that things are difficult so they can make as much profit as possible. Well, that protection of the citizen is one that we are calling for, one that is very crucial to our development. And then for those of us who are going to be in the nation's capital throughout Christmas, security has been beefed up in the FCT and states ahead of Christmas. The Daily Trust has more on that from page 30. And then, of course, this is also the story from the Daily Trust on page 23. 800 terrorism suspects acquitted over lack of evidence. Ties into something we've been talking about for a while, which is, if we're going to prosecute people, let's do it right. We cannot have people that you say this person committed this crime or that crime, and then when it comes to the prosecution of it, lack of evidence is what the issue is. And not just about terrorism. Maybe when we see fraud, or whenever we arrest people and say, oh, these people were committing one crime or the other, it always kind of ends in the media hype about it. So following through is what we're asking for. How do we get people who are supposed to be doing the prosecutions to get these things right, ensure that justice is actually served in these matters? So those are some of the thinkers this morning from the papers. We'll go on a short break. When we come back, we'll kick off our first conversation of the day, which has to do with the president's media chat, his very first since assuming office. Stay with us.
I don't want to question people with 5 limousine type of vehicles on the roads. Well, we should teach management with all our programs. We have to manage our resources within our means. There is no way out that you give out fuel and allow all the entire neighboring countries as Father Christmas. I don't have any regret whatsoever removing the subsidy. It is necessary. We cannot spend our future generations' investment upfront.
But do you think it should have been phased, done in bits?
It is part of the fear that is unnecessary. Phased, no matter how you cut it or you slice it in segments, you still have to meet the bills. So, cut your coat. Strictly to your size. It's what we must manage. Management is the issue. And we have no choice but to pull the handbrake. Otherwise, we are headed for slippery slopes.
Coat according to your size, says Mr. President. I do find that with that particular phrase, many people don't quite understand how that works. Do you cut your coat according to your size or according to your cloth? Because if I was going to talk about saving or living according to your means, it means that you should cut your coat according to your cloth. So if your cloth is not enough to make a suit, you can make shorts with it. That's how I see it in my head, but maybe you think differently about it. But joining us to discuss some of the things the president said and more, joining us live in the studio, Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo is here, legal practitioner, former spokesperson of the Labour Party, and columnist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you, viewers, for joining in.
And joining us via Zoom is Mr. Jesu Tega Onokpasa, a lawyer and APC chieftain. Thank you so much for being with us on the program, sir.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start off with Mr. Okonkwo. Let's talk a bit about this presidential broadcast, this media chat. It's the first time he's done it since he came into office. Some people have said there's kudos for that. At least gathering the media together. Our very own Malkwe Ogun Yusuf was there. You saw her asking him that question about the removal of fuel subsidy. Should it have been tapered, she said. And he said, why? Why should it have been tapered? And they said, well, maybe some kind of contingency plan. And he said, what contingency? What are your thoughts on that particular conversation?
Well, it's very regrettable that first and foremost in a democracy, which requires transparency and accountability to the people, a president is having the first presidential chat 19 months after taking over power. That's about 40% of his presidency. 19 months is about 40% of the 4-year term of a president. We have to stop all this nonsensical giving kudos to failures. For 19 months, you've not been able to tell Nigerian people what you have been doing. And you started doing wrong things from the day you were sworn in.
But he has been speaking. He has done briefings. He has been giving speeches. He's been explaining himself since he came into office.
Democracy is not about your talking to the people. It's about your being interrogated by the people. The Constitution says the participation of the people in their government shall be ensured. The people participate through their representatives, both from the media, both from any policy you want to do, has to be interrogated by the people. Democracy is not just about doing what is good for the people, it is also about doing what the people want. Now, let's come to the nitty-gritty of the presidential media chart. There were about 4 major branches of what he said. Talked about the stampede, talked about cost of governance, talked about corruption, talked about the tax reform bill. These are about the major areas. About the stampede, this president shifted all the responsibility to the organizers, people who wanted to help people who are hungry. Let me tell you, this stampede happened in the east. It happened in the west. It happened in the north. That means it's now a general thing that Nigerians from all sectors are hungry and things are hard. They did not die in stampede because they were poor. Poverty exists in every country. They died in a stampede because they were desperately hungry. In other words, they know that if they don't have that food, they don't even have anything to fall back in their house. And that is why they had to struggle for 5,000 naira and for grains of rice. The worth of life in Tinubu's government is now about 5,000 naira and it's about grains of rice. Look at what happened in Abuja, in the Catholic ministry. They've been doing that for decades. They've been doing that for years. Why is today's own different? It is different because people have become desperately hungry. When people say negligence of the people organizing it, people that were expecting like 500 persons and they saw 5,000 persons, they wouldn't have reasonably assumed that 5,000 persons will come. And when the 5,000 persons came, they would have been able to organize themselves if they were not desperate. But because they were desperate, they did not wish to ever live there without having anything. Having seen that more people came, they knew that some people would live there without anything. So they had to now struggle to make sure that they are part of the beneficiaries. That is a sign of a failed state, struggling and dying for the most basic necessity of life, food. When the president visited Lagos the first time, his own people started it. We are hungry, sir. And he said things are well. His dim-wit fellow people that are serving him will go to him and say things are well. And when he neglected those signs, by August, the whole nation, they were protesting for hunger and hardship. They neglected it. In December, people are now dying of stampede for food for 5,000 naira. Now, and he said, it is the fault of the organizers, fault of the people that want to help. You are incompetent government that cannot cater for the security and welfare of its people. Now again, let's move into the issue of cost of governance.
We'll get to the cost of governance, but I want to get Mr. Nokpasa to respond to that. Mr. Nokpasa, well, Mr. Kenneth has said he's finding some issue with the president's views on the stampede. Where do you stand?
Well, the stampede is most unfortunate. May the lives that were lost, may their souls rest in peace. I think the real problem is that we have just failed woefully in producing food for our citizens. You know, when we are campaigning for this administration, the people were calling us Agbadorians, you know, because our president was always talking about producing food. Unfortunately, we don't seem to be able to produce the food, you know, and you just have to accept that's our fault, you know. The good thing about agriculture is that you can plant a crop today and harvest in 3 months, in 6 months, in 1 year, you know, and try to convince our president to just to concentrate on food production. Even if we cannot reduce the price of fuel or whatever else, let our people have food to eat. Let our citizens have food to eat. You know, Kenneth is trying to be overly political about the matter. That's just who my dear brother Kenneth Okonkwo is. May their souls rest in peace. You know, and it's a shame that we have allowed prices to skyrocket, especially of food. You know, of food. Let people just have food to eat. That's my take on it.
I mean, that's a very interesting dynamic. I mean, an admission, because you are a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, that is an admission of failure, you know, and one that I think you're standing by.
No.
Because what you said in the beginning of this conversation was, we have failed. What, did I hear it wrongly? He said, we have failed to provide food for our people, and that is just it. That was what you said. So are you admitting that as a party in governance, when it comes to food production for the Nigerian people, has the party failed?
Yes. No. Because we did not concentrate on food, on providing food for our citizens. Because we did not.
I mean, I'm still hearing the same thing from you, Mr. Okonkwo. We'll get back to you, Mr. Onokpasa, on that, but that does sound like an admission of failure.
Well, you know, I so much enjoy my brother Onokpasa because he seems reasonably, honest. You know, I used the word failure, I think, about once, and he used the word failure about 5 times. So, and yet he said I'm political. And actually, he echoed, more than myself. But having said that, God forbid that I will play politics with the destiny of Nigeria.
Because that is what the All Progressive Congress accused opposition. Actually, it was the PDP that they were responding to.
Yes,
and they said you're playing politics with this.
Yes, that is the cheap blackmail that failures always do. Rather than addressing the issue, they shift the responsibility. Have you ever seen this government? When they say they take responsibility, I wonder which responsibility. The worst statement the president made in the presidential chart is scoring himself excellent. He said he has done excellent job. The man that is staying with me in this studio is an Agbadorian. And he said we have failed. Was that not an admission that this president has done the worst job by any president since independence? And I always place my facts on the table. What are the facts on the table? This president, in the last 12 months, we have had national grid collapse for more than 12 times. It has never happened in Nigerian history. Meaning, the power is not accessible, it is not available, it is not affordable. This president, between October and November, and this is a president that is priding itself or himself that security has improved. More than 2,496 people have been murdered and about 1,757 persons kidnapped between October and November. This is a president in that presidential chart said we should cut our cloth, according to him, according to his body. But thank God you have said good. Now, this is the president that is driving the most expensive car in the history of presidents of Nigeria, limousine beast, that cost Nigeria almost ₦1 billion. This is the president that had a presidential jet working, but he went for a new one, 150 billion naira. And this is the president that is saying, cut your cloth according to your size. So in the area of what has he excelled to award himself excellent?
Let's find out what Mr. Nakpasa thinks. Mr. Nakpasa, was the president right to score himself excellent?
Well, no, I must admit that, because I must just admit that it was not right, because we ought to be able to feed our citizens, and it's very, very easy to do that. You just you simply just get the people to go to farm. You mobilize them to go to the farm and produce food. And unfortunately, we've not been able to do that. And that is even us in our party. We feel a bit bad about what that our president has not been able to mobilize Nigerians to produce food for our citizens.
You do seem very. I'm listening to you right there. You do seem very saddened, and like Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo said, reasonably honest in your assertions this morning. What would you think? What would be a score? What would be the score? Because what the president did yesterday was score himself excellent. What would be your score for his governance style this year, at least?
Well, I can't. I'm a Catholic, Kayla. I'm a Catholic, and we have not done well. That's the truth. Simple.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get back to you. An admission there from Mr. Nakpasa. He's an APC chieftain saying we have not done well. Is that a step in the right direction? At least if someone from the party, from the All Progressives Congress, is saying, look, we haven't done well. Is that a step in the right direction at least? Maybe we're on the road to recovery, maybe.
If the president has been listening to the Onokpasas of this world, he would have been performing better in office. But he's listening to people who are telling him he's excellent. And he will come to the whole world to be saying he's scoring himself excellent on the graves of about more than 70 persons that died on the eve of that score to himself because of food. What is the level of conscience that we need for a man to be compassionate for his people? Look, the facts are there. Facts are sacred. This same president, when he was told about corruption, how to fight corruption, he said, oh, I will fight corruption. We are fighting it. How? We increase the wages of the people. Oh, we are allowing people to go to school, education. Let me tell you, corruption since the fall of man in Garden of Eden is innate in human nature. And the only thing that can deter people from being corrupt is deterrence, punishment for corruption. This president has just revealed that he does not intend to punish anybody that is corrupt in his administration. The only thing that will make him to punish anybody is when you are no longer loyal. And it's happened with the humanitarian ministry. I was here when I told you it was optics. How many months now? Have those people been tried? You suspended, you removed. Has that person been tried? Now, when he talked about he is increasing the wages of people, when this president came in, the minimum wage in Nigeria was $60 per a person. Today is about $46 per person, less than $2 a day. And then you're talking about you're fighting corruption by increasing minimum wage, when actually the value of the minimum wage has reduced. That means he is actually increasing the propensity for corruption. Because you talk about currency, not in the quantity of it, but in the quality of it. $1 has remained $1 since I was born. The value of it changing maybe about 6% or 10%. More than 56 years of my existence on earth. In 1984, We could pride ourselves that $1 was equal to 1 naira. Today, 1,900, it reached that point, was equal to $1. So we have failed about 1,900% times since that time. And there is a president sitting down telling you he's excellent. Now, let me tell you about the subsidy that he talked about. Petrol price is not 1,000 naira because of removal of subsidy. When subsidy was removed, the price came to about 517 naira per liter. What cost the per liter fuel to reach 1,000 something is the devaluation of the currency. Now, economically, any president that is sound economically, you do not devalue your currency when you are a net importer of resources. When he devalued that currency, Nigeria was importing 100% of refined products. What it meant was that you have made your importation more costly than your exportation. And then even the government could not afford that price. That was why they had to introduce some kind of subsidy again. They removed it completely. But because of the devaluation of Naira by more than 300%, from about 500 Naira to 1,700, and it jacked up the price of fuel to about 1,000, more than 1,000. So the issue here is that there is a government that is lacking in knowledge, in economics, in emotional intelligence, and in reality. They are living in alternate universe. The problem with this government is that they are bold to take decisions, but they want to extort all the sacrifice from the people. So when they made the mistake of the devaluation, they allowed the whole impact of their mistake to fall on the people.
I want to be able to...
People are paying through their nose for the incompetence and corruption of this regime.
I want to be able to get what the president said. Let's just listen to him when he talked about palliatives. Let's listen to what the president had to say about that.
It is very sad that people are not well organized. We just have to be more disciplined in our society. Okay, condolences to those who lost the family members. But it is good to give. Every society, even in America, they have food banks. They have hungry people. In Britain, they have food bank. They have warehouses. They are organized. They take tokens to be in line and take turns to collect. It's unfortunate. We just have to. It's a reflection in our bus stops where we don't even want to be on queue before we rush into the vehicle. It is very sad, but we continue to learn from our mistakes. To me, I see this as a very grave error on the part of the organizers. But things are improving. It doesn't kill our happiness for this season. It should be. We should just get on with it.
I mean, I think those were the words that really got you upset in the beginning of our conversation. And I think in many ways, those words from the president have affected Mr. Nokpasa in a way where he couldn't do. The Mr. Nokpasa that we know would have been a strong defender, and he's admitting, saying, no, this was not good. He didn't like it very much. At the time, you also mentioned, the president's stand on the cabinet reduction.
Oh, yes.
Because that was one of the conversations that was had. I think it was Mr. Babajide Titoju who asked him yesterday, how are you going to reduce cost of governance? This cabinet is one of the biggest. I know you've done some reductions before. Are you going to reduce it a little bit more? And he said no.
First of all, he never did any reduction. He had 48 ministers coming in. When he removed 5, he replaced it with 7. So the issue here is that, like I told you, there is a president that is living in alternate universe. He said we must learn to live within our means. We should not be spending more than we are producing. How can a government in a capitalist economy think about bloating cabinet as as the explanation for efficiency?
Well, he says they're performing optimally. Those were his words. Good. They're performing optimally. Everyone there.
Good. That is where I hold the journalists that interrogated him very responsible. Because when he said that, he even dared them to give him an example of one minister that is not performing. And I just told you about a minister. We've had 12 national grid collapse. In 12 months, it has never happened. If that is performance, then it is regrettable. Now, the issue about cost of governance. In a capitalist nation, a minister's role is more of regulatory because he doesn't go there to do it. There is private ownership to means of production. What are you doing with 3 ministers in agriculture alone? And people are dying because of food. You have just bloated the bureaucracy, spending money on people that are doing nothing. What are you doing with about 16 ministers of state? That is assistant to minister. And you're giving them the largesse.
They won't agree with you.
Of a minister. I am saying it.
They won't agree with you.
Because minister of state means that there is a substantive minister. That's the only reason you say minister of state.
We'll get to that. But I think we're joined by Dr. Taufik Raimi, development expert and business economist and policy analyst. Mr. Raimi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kayla.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kayla. Good morning, Nigeria.
Talk to us a little bit about the president's speech. You've been listening to us talking about his stand on the palliative situation and the stampedes. And then now we've moved into the size of his cabinet and his statement yesterday that he's not going to be reducing that cabinet anytime soon. Saying basically that they're all performing optimally. What do you think about that?
Yeah, by way of simple encapsulation, I will say that the presidential chart heard yesterday came to me as one that is very assertive. The president, His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, spoke with a lot of boldness, confidence, and focus on his Renew Hope agenda. He delved into what he has achieved so far in the last 18 months. He also talked about what currently is at work. And he also mentioned that there are quite a lot of hope for Nigeria to believe in, moving forward. He talked about how insecurity has greatly reduced. He cited the example of our citizens being able to travel from one place to the other, particularly on Kaduna Road. He also mentioned about his decision to remove oil subsidy and the effect of that already that his administration has recorded. He also talked about the issue of ministers, the size of his cabinet, which you are just talking about now, that he rooted his decision to retain them based on 2 factors, efficiency and effectiveness. The president gave quite a lot of confidence as regards other things that his administration has been doing. So I want to believe, honestly, I'm convinced that the president seems to have settled down to the job. Of course, he was prepared for the job. Now he has gotten the mandate, and he has seen some of the challenges that the countries are facing from being an insider rather than looking at it from the outside. So I want to believe that the president's speech rekindle hope among most of Nigerians. Now, definitely, Are there areas I'm expecting more? Yes, of course. I'm expecting that there will be enough strategies, effective strategies, realistic strategies towards achieving most of the laudable plans that he has mentioned. So some of these I would want to see ease of doing business being enhanced in 2025 and moving forward.
Dr. Raimi, yes. He scored himself excellent in his performance as president. Do you agree? Is that a justifiable score?
First of all, having been an insider, and he knows the problem he inherited from previous administration, and he knows what he has done, and perhaps he also knows, is convinced about the plans that he has moving forward. He may have judged himself excellent, especially when he talked about, I think where he used the word excellent, was especially when he talked about having not had recourse to NMPC in the last 3 months to collect money, which means that he has stabilized our reserve. He has also created enough, he's growing our revenue base. So I want to believe that I think he has scored excellent in a number of his agendas. Of course, there are also a number of, some other areas that are work in progress. If you look at the Minister of FCT, the infrastructure work that is already ongoing in the last 18 months, you will say that his administration has scored excellent. If you look at some of the foreign trip he has made and the gains that we are beginning to record in terms of inflow into Nigeria, I think you will say that he has done well. If you look at how he has frontierly attacked the issue of insecurity in various ways, maybe he has done well. If you look at the refinery, the private refinery that has come on stream during his own regime, now Nigeria can be proud of refining their own crude through Dangote. I think he has done well. If you look at
let's talk. I want to be able to take them one after the other. When the question about the stampedes came up, you heard Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo here saying that, look, he felt like the president had moved the blame away from the fact that there is an existential problem in the country to blaming organizers and Nigerians who couldn't stay well on queues and things like that, and felt that was a bit insensitive on the part of the president. Where do you stand on that?
Yes, my expectation is that maybe our president should have visited Ibadan, or your state when this happened last week, Wednesday. I know he had quite a lot of activities for this period. In fact, you will commend him for cancelling his schedule for last Saturday when he heard about the stampede that occurred in Abuja and Anambra. I think he's a passionate president. Let's give it to him. It's just that when he talk about we the citizen, it means that he believes that his government alone cannot do or solve all the problems that are bedeviling us. We require our citizens, you, myself, private sector, to be able to follow certain protocols. I commensurate with those, the 3 states, as it were, if Abuja is counted as a state, more or less, where this has happened. I don't think he's unmindful or he lacks pity. It's just that he's also saying that even when we commensurate with ourselves, what is it that we should begin to do as citizens? We should have protocol. These state governments should have protocol for large gathering. We should not wait when crisis happen before we start talking of what the government should do, what the people should do, what the organizers should do. So I am even calling for an advertised protocol by each state in case of you want to hold large gathering. Churches, you can see how the number of people that go to churches. We are a very religious country. Churches, mosques, other even parties and all that. The shows, our creative industry is becoming very, very rejuvenated, which is good. Must also begin to say that when people go to this place, are their lives safe? Would they go well and come back well? So I think that is what the president is trying to emphasize. And we must not put politics in everything. Of course, politics is everything.
Should the president reduce his cabinet?
The president and his cabinet, I want to say that even in private sector, that some of us have belonged and we have consulted both for private and for public sector. The underlying philosophy is always efficiency. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you have if you reduce to your his cabinet to 10, it will perform optimally. It does not also mean that if you increase it to 47 or 50 as it were, they are too large. I think the underlying philosophy should be efficiency, effectiveness, performance evaluation. What is it that they are supposed to do? What are their KPI? And what are they doing? I want to see our president not waiting for another 1 year, even before he make judgment about the performance of his cabinet. I want to see like what is done in private sector within 6 months, what we call probation period.
I mean, that's a very interesting dynamic, Mr. Raimi. The fact that they moved the conversation, at least he moved the conversation, and you're doing it right now, move the conversation to the efficiency of the cabinet. Yes. But the question really was about reducing the cost of governance.
No,
are there ways that the president should reduce the cost? You can keep efficiency while you reduce the cost of governance, or is that an impossibility?
Okay, let me tell you some of the factors or ways by which the cost of governance can be reduced, even if you retain the size of your cabinet. Because after all, how much are these ministers being paid? You know, of course. So if you can reduce the size of governance, one, by eliminating repetitive budget items by ministries. Every year you see ministry budgeting for vehicles, whereas a vehicle should not just have its life cycle as 1 year. So you can reduce. In fact, you will gain so much by reducing cost of lithography. You know, people buy paper, they buy photocopiers, even travels. I was listening to one of his aides yesterday saying that he had only traveled twice this year. And that is the senior special advisor to the president on economic matters, Dr. Tope Fasua. He was on another station, your sister's station yesterday. So twice in a year is not much. So I want to believe that what we should be looking at, like we do in private sector, is how can we increase productivity? If these people are productive, if your expenditure is 10 million and you generate 25 million, you are productive. The problem is when they are not productive. So that I think that is from where we should look at it. And again, I must add, the question also to ask is he legal? Is his cabinet legal, or is he violating the constitution? The answer is no.
All right, Dr. Raimi, I'm going to get back to you. I need to come back to Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo in the studio here. One other thing that the president talks about, you've heard his responses, you can respond when you're giving your response. He talks about the tax reforms. And in fact, we're seeing that as one of the major stories. And most every newspaper today, he's not going back on those tax reforms. You know, and then he also talked about the service chiefs and security in the country. Just your views on some of the assertions that he made, especially when it comes to the tax reforms. He's not going back. People say these tax reforms are pro-people.
First of all, I listened to the last speaker. And one thing about people who want to parrot the achievements of this government is that they do not speak with facts and quantitative analysis. What figure did he state whatsoever to support any of his analysis? The inflation rate, what is it? Food inflation, more than 40%. I bought the bag of rice that I used, 109,000 naira. Now, he talked about Buhari's government. The truth is that Tinubu's government has beatified Buhari's government. He inherited 195 naira per liter in terms of fuel. The inflation rate that he inherited, he has doubled it like 100%. So he inherited exchange rate for about 420 naira per dollar from Buhari. Our debts, then we were indebted to about 77 trillion. Now it's about 130-something trillion. This is a president that said if I remove all subsidy, I will have enough revenue to provide the infrastructure. And this is a president that has removed all the subsidy and is borrowing. He has borrowed more than $15 billion since he came in. Maybe more than Buhari borrowed throughout his 8 years. So when people who speak, the last speaker just came in and just said what President Tinubu said in his presidential chat and gave him a pass mark. In law, when you want to corroborate an evidence, your own evidence will be independent of what is said. Not repeating exactly the same thing the person said, and now say the president called himself excellent, so he should be excellent. That's by the way. When we talk about the tax reforms, Section 146 or thereabout of the tax bill said they were going to increase VAT from 5% to 15%. And yet he said the tax bill is pro-poor. The president said that...
That's because particular segments of society are exempted. Yes. Particular people...
From what? From consumption?
From payment.
You go to the supermarket to buy and you're exempted.
So you're still paying it if you're going to do...
That's what I'm saying. That's consumption tax. The tax you pay for buying things. Do you see somebody and say, oh no, your face looks poor. Please, this VAT is not part of
Show me your pay slip.
Good.
So that I can exempt you.
And he said it's pro-poor. This is a tax that is 800,000 per annum that they said you are exempted from paying tax. The minimum wage is 70,000 a month. That comes to 840,000 per annum. So nobody is exempted at all from that if it is left like that. And he said it's pro-poor. What is pro-poor? Let me tell you, I support the tax reform bill, not because it is pro-poor, but because it is going to harmonize our tax administration system so that somebody will not wake up and more than 130 something different agencies, both legal and illegal, will be harassing you along the road. Bring the tax receipt of this, bring the tax receipt. So they are trying to harmonize the tax administration system whereby maybe only one agency will be collecting all the tax. And then you will now pay your tax, whether it's corporate, personal, this and that. It will make it easy for you to pay. The tax bill, any tax bill that increases the tax of Nigerians by 1 naira is a bad law.
Dr. Raimi.
Okay, thank you very much for coming back here. I listened to Barrister Okoko. You won't expect anything less, from him to antagonize everything the president has done. It's his opinion. But while his opinion is his, he should also be mindful not to condemn other people's appraiser. When he talked about statistics, I thought he was saying that I echoed what the president said. The president did not talk about visiting Ibadan or your state to commiserate with the people, the governor of your state, and similar states where this incident has happened. That's my opinion. I also talk about how the government, the president, can also re-energize his cabinet by ensuring that performance evaluation occurs more regularly than it is. Maybe in another 3 months, in another 6 months, he can inject new blood into his system. I also talk about reducing how to reduce cost of governance. So don't let me just dissipate energy in re-emphasizing what I said earlier. It is my considered opinion that when we see what is good, that is also a mark of patriotism. I am a scientist, I'm a development expert, I'm an economist, I know how to quote figures, but I'm also a realist. I want to relate all these figures to the reality on ground. About the tax reform,
yes,
the tax that the president said is it has come to stay. I think it should be supported, but are there areas to be improved upon? Yes. And that is why the issue of negotiation, which the president mentioned, is important. The tax bill is currently before the National Assembly. They will also, I'm sure they will the relevant committees will also engage in public hearing. So if people like Okonko, our former presidential candidate of Labour, the former presidential candidate of Labour Party, His Excellency Peter Obi, has anything to say, let him also put his thought together, and then they can be argued and debated.
Okay, so we are out of time, Mr. Raimi, but just your closing words, Mr. Okonkwo.
Well, my closing words is that this government, this president should listen to the people on the street and stop listening to people that are telling him he's doing an excellent job. He has done the worst job for any president.
Look, he said these are birthing pains, Mr. Okonkwo. He said we need time.
Yes.
When this baby is born, we will rejoice.
Yes, I've always said it, that when your wife is in labor, no matter how hard the labor is, and eventually gives birth to a monster, you will still not rejoice, even though she has given birth. It's only when she gives birth to a bouncing baby child that you rejoice. If you give birth to a child and it is stillborn, the child is dead, do you rejoice? Anytime this president goes to celebrate on Christmas, a lot of people die. Last year, more than 200 persons died in December when he went to visit on holidays. This year, 70-something persons died. Do you celebrate when people are dying? This year's own is of hunger. No, if this president going on holidays brings about these deaths, let him remain in Abuja. Let's know where our problem is coming from.
Okay, we do have to wrap it up there.
Celebrate?
Well, I want to thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo, legal practitioner, former spokesperson of Labour Party, for being with us here on the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Raimi, thank you also very much for being with us on the program. And we had Mr. Onokpasa earlier. I think we lost the connection to him as well. Oh, there he is. So he came back towards the end. Thank you all so much for being with us on the program this morning, and have a very Merry Christmas. Well, Business Morning is up next. Laddie Williams will be taking you through that. We'll be back 30 minutes after. Please stay with us.
Well, thank you, Kayla. Hello and welcome to the Christmas Eve trading day in Lagos, Nigeria. The stock market has been open since about 9:30 a.m. We expect close at about 12:30 p.m. today. But let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. All prices are up in a thin trade ahead of Christmas Day holiday, with prices supported by U.S. economic data and rising oil demand in India. As the world's third largest oil importer, we see Brent there 0.45%, $72.95 a barrel. U.S. WTI crude still not able to get to that $70 psychological level, still below it at $69.53, 0.42%. Let's quickly move on now to see what's playing out, or what played out in the FX market, and see for the NFM window, 1,535 naira. That was a close yesterday. Marginal gain about 0.08%. On the flip side, the NAFEX window will see a weakening there, with the naira closing at 1,550 naira against 1,548 naira, down about 0.12%. We'll see if we get some kind of Santa rally. That's for the FX market, and that means strengthening for the naira. To other stories now, the Securities and Exchange Commission has issued a stern warning to fintech companies seeking registration, stating that not all applicants will be granted approval. In a meeting with participants from the Regulatory Incubation and Accelerated Regulatory Incubation Program, the SEC Director General, Dr. Emomatimi Agama, emphasized the stringent standards that applicants must meet. Dr. Agama assured stakeholders that the Commission remains committed to transparency and fairness throughout the regulatory process, acknowledging its complexities. He highlighted that registration is a multifaceted process encompassing onboarding, ongoing monitoring, education, and robust risk management. And yes, it's still budget season, and we see the Imo State Governor, Mr. Hope Uzodimma, has presented an estimated budget proposal of 755 billion naira for the 2025 fiscal year to the Imo State House of Assembly. According to the governor, the budget tagged A budget of expanded economic opportunities has capital expenditure pegged at 643 billion naira, representing 85.1% of the total budget, while recurrent expenditure is pegged at 112 billion naira, representing 14.9% of the total budget. Take a listen.
The infrastructural need of the state cannot be overemphasized. As the cities expand to the fringes, so are demands for roads, electricity extension, water reticulation, and etc., etc. The Ministry of Works shall be empowered to deliver remedial actions on dilapidated portions of our failed roads and bridges, while new critical roads will be constructed or reconstructed. Meanwhile, the state government shall complete works on the Owerri-Umuahia Road realization in the first quarter of 2025, while the Olong-Akokwa Road realization is also expected to be completed in the third quarter of 2025. Also, the world-class control post flyover will be completed in the first quarter 2025. I have set out our priorities. My goal is to concentrate on their faithful implementation so as to achieve maximum results. At the end of the day, I want more people to be happy that we are indeed on the path of sustainable economic development through this budget of expanded economic opportunities.
Moving along to Anambra State now, we'll see Governor Professor Chukwuma Soludo signed the 2025 appropriation bill into law during a brief ceremony at the governor's lodge. The president at the event were key members of the State House of Assembly and the Executive Council. The governor announced that the signing marks the commencement of the implementation of the 2025 budget, valued at 606.99 billion naira, starting from January 2025. Expressing his gratitude, Governor Soludo commends the State Assembly for their diligence in ensuring the timely passage of the bill.
With this being signed into law today, the Anambra State will then be ready to begin the journey to implement the 2025 budget with effect from January 1, 2025. We've consistently met the fiscal year starting January 1st to December 31st.
There you have it, with all the governors giving out their spending plans for 2025. What's the revenue plan and expenditure? We're definitely going to get more. 2025 definitely going to be an interesting year going forward. But it's Christmas Eve. Let's get a sense of what's happening at the commodities market. And we have Mr. Bismarck Rouhani, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company. Great to have you, Mr. Rouhani.
Good morning, and thanks for having me this morning.
Good morning. So, compliments of the season. But before we get into the market now, we see President Bola Tinubu had his first media chat, with some selected journalists addressing critical, national issues. What were the key takeaways for you? Anything the president said that we could say could turn out bullish, for the markets and maybe bullish for consumers this season?
I think, quite frankly, what he said was that it's going to have a market-driven economy and that it's determined to ensure that subsidies are reduced and that the process of subsidies are directed and targeted at the vulnerable. That was his speech. He also alluded to the fact that in a competitive world, that the consumer is going to be king and that the price of petroleum products are beginning to actually stabilize. I think those were generally his comments. He did also talk about the fact that the emphasis on revenues and the emphasis on investment. So I think those were expected comments, and quite frankly, what he said what he had to say, and obviously the markets would tell us exactly what the implications of that would be in the near term.
All right, so, bringing out, talking about, PMS prices, and, definitely we see that's been the Achilles heel for consumers at this point. But we're seeing the war, the price war kind of heating up now with MRS announcing that petrol is now being sold at 935 naira at all filling stations. That's their branches nationwide. They also added that if you find any station not following this price, consumers should actually report. So it shows that, we have some stations that might not want to, go with this new price. So I guess the question now is, how low can the price of PMS go, at this rate?
I think one thing that is important to note is that in an industry where there's an oligopoly, which is there are few suppliers and many buyers, the intensity of rivalry becomes very fierce at times. But there is a price leader and a price follower. What has happened clearly is the Dangote refinery is the price leader. They have 90 to 95% of the market share. They are producing at all, consistently and producing quality. Therefore, it is they that will determine, one, the price, two, governed by their cost. And the cost is driven by two things. One, the international price of crude, and two, the exchange rate, the Naira-dollar exchange rate. Those things are moving positively. So as a price leader, the Dangote refinery has come up to establish, take a sword in the ground to say, this is the price. The Ipman and others are bound to follow. So what we see now is that is Dangote refinery a responsible supplier in a market that is an oligopoly? Yes, they are. Two, they are willing to reduce their cost and pass that on to the consumer. So today, the price at the refinery gate is $8.99. The price at the market is $9.35, and Ipman is following. What will that price be in 4 weeks from today? 4 weeks from today, with the price of crude maybe at about $72 a barrel, with the Naira stabilizing, we saw some 7% appreciation yesterday, we think that it is possible that you will be able to bring that price to as low as 900 Naira. But the president warned yesterday in a speech that we do not want to subsidize our neighbors. Therefore, to me as an economist, I think that the price of Nigerian PMS is going to be governed by two things. One, international price of crude, but two, the price at which our neighboring countries are selling. If not, we'll be passing on some of the benefits to the neighboring countries. So generally speaking, the important thing here is that the price of refined PMS, diesel and kerosene will come down based on what we see. And it will be sustainable into the months of January in 2025. In the oil markets, we really cannot start projecting much further than that. So by January 2025, you see the price there. And the effect of that is that inflation, the price of petrol and diesel is a major causative factor for inflation. And therefore, if these prices remain the way they are, then we will see that inflation will not begin to increase any further, will begin to moderate. The problem we have today is that the transporters, when the prices went up, they were very eager and fast in increasing their transport fares. But ever since the price started coming down, we have not noticed any reduction in transport fares. And we have not noticed any, like they say, prices are always sticky downwards. We have not seen that enthusiasm to actually bring down in general level of prices. So there's a lag between when policies are implemented and when the impact is felt. We think that in January, which is normal time for prices to come down after Christmas, the price of all of these commodities will begin to decline, and the price of transport fares begin to decline after the New Year ceremony.
Right. I guess I've not tasted this new price yet for PMS. I still have maybe the over 1,000 Naira one. That's in my tank right now. I need to try and get that before things change. But, Mr. Rani, let's look at the oil market now. We're seeing some kind of recovery there for Brent and WTI, even though WTI is still sub $70 this morning. What are you seeing playing out in the global oil market?
I think one thing is that the winter started, so if you're buying into the futures, you are buying actually into the spring season, which is in March, 90 days from today. I think that what is clear is that Saudi Arabia and Russia want higher prices, but they don't want to rock the boat. Trump wants lower prices. So there's some kind of accommodation between all parties, consumers and producers. But the reality is that at $70 a barrel, which is where WTI is, and $72 a barrel for Brent, it is still $3 below our benchmark price for the budget. So as far as Nigeria is concerned, it poses a major revenue challenge for Nigeria, right? But for the consumer in Nigeria who is buying petrol, it could be a good thing. But as a country, as an oil producer, in this situation, we are going to be having some challenges ahead. And we've also sold forward some of our oil. So our oil revenue is actually challenged. And the president made a remark yesterday to say that NNPC has not remitted anything and we have been able to meet our obligations. But that's not the ideal situation. That NNPC must remit. NNPC must organize itself to be a major contributor to the revenue profile of Nigeria. So while it is good that we have a buffer to withstand the shocks of NNPC's inefficiency, we now have to begin to look at how do we reform those institutions so that each and every one of them can begin to contribute their own towards the goal. We have a very, very tough 2025 ahead of us. But like I say, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going.
Right, the tough get going. And talking about being tough, how do you think the last-minute shopping, is going now? We're seeing that impacting on prices so far in the market. How are you seeing it?
Well, we've seen a noticeable increase in prices, and what amazed me was the rice is at 110, and onions is as high as 260,000, up 8%. Tomatoes are up 14% at 40,000, and pepper is up 30%. We think that because they are perishable, one, two, because the Christmas is only tomorrow and this week, those prices will increase until maybe later this evening. And as from tomorrow, we begin to see them flatlining. And then as from January 2nd, Thursday next week, we begin to see prices decline. But what is interesting, though, is that the Naira appreciated by 7% alone yesterday. Why? Because the Bureau de Changes are getting $25,000 a week from now till January 30th. Is it speculative depreciation, which means that the currency will start depreciating again in February? I'm not so sure. We had always said, and I've called it that by February, the currency will be trading at 1550. That was just our own arithmetical projection, but it just happens to be that it is going to play out. So if the currency value stays at 1550 in the parallel market, and you said just now that the NAFEM rate also went to that level, so there's some kind of convergence there. So from an economic perspective, those are efficient variables, and the way it's moving closer to its real equilibrium exchange rate. If all of these things happen, then you might see some stability, but we shouldn't get carried away by short-term directions of prices. In the long run, we need to increase productivity, we need to increase investment, and we have to stop the waste in government. I think those three things go together, and that's the key variable, that we need to stop the waste, we need to deploy resources efficiently, and we have to be patient, because this is not an overnight silver bullet. It's going to be a very hard struggle to get to where people begin to feel the impact and believe it the way it is.
All right, I guess, after the holidays, we'll gauge, maybe data will tell us how resilient the consumer was, and how the sellers were able to... Do
not buy too much, Ladi, don't buy too much.
Yeah.
Wait until January when the prices are coming down.
Yeah.
You can buy
then I'll buy my favorite live chicken, at that time.
Oh, yes. And don't forget, turkeys don't vote for Christmas.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Ronnie, thank you so much. Always great having your perspective on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, more conversations right here on Business Morning. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Well, see, the Enugu State Government launched the Enugu Geographic Information System, that's ENGIS, an initiative aimed at revolutionizing land administration and use in the states. The platform promises to bring transparency, efficiency, and security to land transactions, making Enugu an attractive destination for investors. But join us to break it down more. We have Barrister Chimaobi Okorie as the Commissioner for Lands and Urban Development in Enugu. Great to have you on the show. Good morning and compliments of the season.
Morning, laddie. Compliments of the season.
Fantastic.
Nice
So,
to be here.
yeah, so we see, ENGIS, as it's popularly called, has gathered significant praise so far. Talk to me about the innovative aspects of this initiative and how does it address challenges related to land use and administration in the state?
Thank you, laddie. The ENGIS, like you rightly noticed, has really gathered a lot of positive comments, from stakeholders, especially, stakeholders in the land's ecosystem. And the reason is not far-fetched. What it is that the government of, His Excellency, Dr. Peter Mbah, the governor of Enugu State, has put in place this tool as an effective and efficient tool through which all the entire land resource of the state can easily be captured online. Now, it goes beyond just having that resource there. It's also a very interactive tool that would enable, would be investors, that would enable land users, land owners, intending buyers or intending subscribers to land to get on the platform, to interact, to do their searches, to do the regularization of titles, and even to apply for fresh allocations of land, at a click of button, at the comfort of the bedroom, at the comfort of your office. So it actually optimizes the process. It minimizes a lot of the human interferences and makes sure that it's what you ask for is what you get.
And talk to me, about the advantages here of this platform for both current and prospective, investors in the state, because we know, some investors, they get driven away when they see some of the issues that come with land administration most times, with issues around land grabbing and encroachment. So talk to me about how it addresses the concerns, of investors.
Thank you, laddie. The software, the system essentially eliminates I could easily say to zero, the challenges of land grabbing, the challenges of double allocation of lands, and all the menace that, were the stories in the past. Because what you find out is that when you run a search online, you're able to tell the use, first of all, of that land. If it's designated for residential area, for instance, you're quickly able to tell that. If it's designated for agriculture, you can tell from the platform. Then you can tell the neighborhood, you can tell the available plots, you can tell the size, you can tell the topography. So it makes it easy for you as an investor to have comfort. It also makes it easy for you to tell whether the land is actually designated for the purpose you want. And then, of course, it makes it easy for you to tell whether there is some other person on the land. You can tell the topography, you can tell the size of the land. Now, part of what it is, again, is that His Excellency, the Governor, Dr. Mbah, had already promised in the Enugu, beyond just deploying the GIS, that he was going to help unlock land assets. The governor at the time had realized that land was a sleeping asset to many. You have mansions, you have large expanses of land in the hinterlands, in the satellite parts of the state, which didn't have commercial value for users or for owners. So part of what we're going to achieve through this platform is that people are able to come forward and register title to every land, irrespective of whether it is, what we already designated as urban area or what is currently known as rural area. So the title becomes uniform. For your house deep down in the village, you can actually have a certificate of occupancy. And with that, you have unlocked that access. It means that you can place that title for a mortgage, for a facility in your bank, you can trade with it. So it's not just the social or emotional satisfaction of building a mansion, in the village. It also quickly eliminates the challenges of, on lands without a valid title. Lands that you do not have anything beyond oral history or oral tradition that suggests that, okay, this land belongs to this family or to this community.
So I guess with this one, you don't run the risk of having to wait many years just to get governor's consent.
His Excellency Dr. Mba has promised Indian investors that you will get your certificate of occupancy within 48 hours. And that's the marching order we have, and that's our commitment to our investors. It's a process that is seamless. The governor has an interface with this system, so he's able to tell when there is an application, and once it's on his table, he's able to grant his consent or approval as the case may be. And then, of course, the certificate is issued.
All right, break down the technology, behind this NGIS and how it functions in practice.
Yeah, simply put, it's called geospatial technology. And what it does is to mop up data, first of all, existing data. Recall that Enugu has already been a very old city. So you can imagine the quantity of data we have probably in manual form, paper form, manual files on land and on our land systems. So we have had to digitize all of that and, of course, upload them online. That's part of the technology, that's the back end. And then after that process, we have now got a system where the entire landscape of Enugu is visible online. So the process simply requires an applicant to go online. Of course, as a transition, we are happy to have people walk in as well to the office premise, the NG's office, and interact so that they can be guided. You walk online, the forms are available online, very simple and very user-friendly forms. You put in your essential details, and then it gives you the options. The option of regularization of title, the option of doing a land search, and the option of applying for a fresh land allocation. So when you pick your option, it takes you to the next level, where you now put in your critical details. After that, of course, it expectedly takes you to a payment platform, which is also online and seamless. So it's when we say 48 or 72 hours, it's actually to say a worst case scenario. It's actually a process. On the day of the launch, people were able to test run it, and they could do it actually within 10, 20 minutes.
All right, very quickly now, before I let you go, definitely interesting technology there, but what message would you like to, convey to investors regarding the opportunities, presented by this platform, with improved investment climate expectations in Enugu State?
Thanks, Ladi. His Excellency, the governor, will usually say that tomorrow is here. That's our catchphrase in Enugu, and that has become our reality. So my message to investors and will-be investors is that today is just the right time to invest in Enugu. Of course, we know the relevance of land to practically every kind of investment you want to make, be it real estate, be it industry, be it to build a home, be it tourism. Land plays a critical role. And so my message, the message of Enugu State, the message of His Excellency Dr. Peter Mba is that investors should take this opportunity. They should come into a friendly and welcoming Enugu State. They should come into a de-risked land ecosystem. We have taken off the risks that investors ordinarily are not wired to take. The risk of land grabbing is out of it completely. The risk of, having the wrong use of land, a land that was meant for agriculture being given to you for residential purposes is out of it. The risk of multiple allocation of title is totally out of it. So we urge investors to come into Enugu. Today will definitely be a lot better than waiting till tomorrow, because like we would say, tomorrow is here already.
All right, we'll keep tracking to see progress of this platform, going into 2025. But thank you so much, Barrister Chimaobi Okorie, Commissioner for Land and Urban Development in Enugu State, and compliments of the season.
Many thanks, Ladi. Compliments of the season.
Thank you. All right, so that's the show today. Member markets are open right now, but closed. That's for 12:30. That's because it's going to be a thin trade today, and we know it's the holidays are upon us at this point. So I guess you're not going to be trading too hard at this point, but hopefully you get that rally that you've been looking for. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. I hand things back to the Sunrise Daily team.
The Minister of State for Defense, Mr. Bello Matawale, makes a triumphant return to Gusau, the state capital, after more than a year. His arrival sparks a massive gathering of supporters who turned out in their numbers to welcome him. Supporters chant praises and display banners as they escort the convoy of the former governor of the state through the city. He arrives his residence in Gusau, where he hosts some of his party members. The minister used the opportunity to weigh in on the recent lifting of ban on mining activities in the state.
I solicited to Mr. President to lift the ban on mining and lift the ban on no-fly zone of Zamfara State, which he graciously approved. Therefore, Mr. President has approved the lifting the ban on mining, which was enforced by the previous administration of Muhammadu Buhari. But today, Mr. President has approved that the ban of mining should be lifted, which the people of Zamfara will benefit from this, because it was you that are going to be involved on these activities.
He also speaks on the activities of the Lakurawa terrorist group in the state.
About the Lakurawa, people have been talking Lakurawa in Zamfara. It's not true. Lakurawa are not in Zamfara State. This is a band coming from Burkina Faso and Mali. We have a band that are coming up to Niger and some part of Sokoto State. If you recall, last 2 weeks, we have a major operation in their car, which will destroy a lot of their equipment, their armory, and some of them were killed.
He assured Nigerians of the federal government's determination and commitment to bring an end to the activities of bandits and other terrorist groups in the country's northwest region and other parts of Nigeria.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily right here in our Abuja studios, and we are going to be talking about the lifting of the mining ban in Zamfara State and what that means for the people in the state, and of course the security situation in Zamfara State. I don't know if I was the only one who noticed that conspicuously absent from that event was the governor himself, Dauda Lawal. And there you just listened to the Minister of State for Defense, Mr. Bello Matawale, who was former governor of Zamfara State, but just helping us to situate it. What does this mean? Does this mean progress? Is the place safe enough? What happens to the terrorist organizations? What's the dynamic? Joining us to discuss this, we have Professor Okey Ikechukwu, Executive Director of Development Specs Academy. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you.
And joining us via Zoom from Zamfara State is the chairman of the Miners Association of Nigeria, Zamfara State chapter, Mr. Sani Abdullahi. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning for having me, Kela Megwa.
I want to be able to start with you, just because I want to situate this conversation really. So you're in charge of the Miners Association in Zamfara State. What does this mean, the lifting of the mining? Is the place safe enough for this lifting of the ban to continue? For mining, I mean, to continue in the place? And what does this, what's the dynamic really among your members since the lifting of this ban?
The previous administration of President Muhammadu Buhari suspended mining activities and declared Zamfara no-fly zone in 2019, now for more than 5 years. And the licensed miners who were granted mining leads by the Prime Minister of Solid Minerals through the Mining Cadastre Office have now hands off their mining activities in Zamfara State. The ongoing space was taken by non-state actors, that is armed bandits and other criminal elements, who engage in illegal mining of gold and other rare earth minerals, that is lithium, copper, and other potential minerals. So that gave even more escalation of the security situation in Zamfara State. But with the recent announcement of the lifting of the mining activities by Mr. President, now the miners in Zamfara State, under my watch, Miners Association, are jubilating because they are back to business. The licensed miners, not the artisanal miners or informal miners, because we in the Miners Association, we don't call illegal miners, we call them informal miners. So with the rich mineral deposits we have in Zamfara State, I think we are good to go. And many of our operators, licensed operators, have invested heavily. There is an evil man from Anambra State. He has a copper and gold processing plant. He invested over 20 billion naira for the past 8 years. But he's out of the business. Part of his company were vandalized by armed bandits. Even my own site, which I started making some effort to put machineries and start working, have been vandalized, and part of it was taken over by these non-state actors, the armed bandits. So that was the danger when the mining activities were suspended. The real operators, people who are ready to create jobs, people who are ready to fight for unemployment, were flushed out of the place by the government, by the government task force. But the spaces were taken over by the non-state actors.
Okay.
To the greatest surprise of the miners, one of the most wealthiest, the most strongest armed bandit in the northern region, Alilu Sububu, when he was killed by the military operation in September, he left not less than 200 kilos of gold in his camp. So if you calculate the current price of gold and the gold he mined illegally using his criminal ways, the government have lost a lot of revenue and royalty.
I mean, Mr. Abdullahi, I hear you, and I do understand that there is jubilation among your members. The question is about safety. Are these threats eliminated and you can go about your business normally?
You see, this issue of banditry does not start today. It's for more than a decade. So, but what we are saying, the armed banditry activities have been downgraded to some minimal level, more than before.
And you know, another issue, when you say that, I'm sorry, Mr. Abdullahi, I'm trying to be able to get us to keep to some timing here. When you say that, we're not talking about people doing the mining. I want to be able to talk about the communities where these mining activities take place. Because what the issue was that you call them informal miners. And then these bandits and all kinds of criminal elements would besiege these mining areas and have to chase all the community members out of the place, continue their illegal mining. When they are done, they go away. The community members come back. And then when it's time to mine again, they come and they terrorize the place. And the community members have to leave, and then there's death and destruction. That's what the issue was. Is this dynamic cleared now? And should the people that live in these communities where the mining is happening in your state, should they feel at home and relax that mining can continue and we are safe?
Yes, you see, recently the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, under the watch of Minister of Solid Minerals, Dr. Henry Dele Alake, have launched a mining marshal. So with the mining marshal and the forest guard, and also conventional security, I think they are going to fight the excesses of this armed bandits. And going by the mining regulation Act 2007, it was clearly prescribed all the licensed miners will be given a clear security protection to operate in their mining site.
Okay.
So I think with this development, and also with the recently launched mining marshal police, I think we are good to go.
All right, let me come back to the studio here, Professor. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get your thoughts on that dynamic, because he says every miner would have some kind of security with them, you know. But that question about the communities and the safety of these communities when these mining activities happen is one that I haven't really gotten a response to.
No, but even if you have security for the individual miners, let's suppose I'm a miner. What you're telling us is that I'll have some very strong security around me. Mm-hmm. The question is, what will be the capacity of that security vis-a-vis the capacities of criminals in the environment? But let's do first things first. First, we commend the government for lifting the ban, because the ban, in my view, achieved nothing. It was only years of unarmed income for the government, official income, and years of illegally earned income for the miners, the criminals, and all of them in the place. And for 5 years, it's unheard of. I mean, you have a source of income. Because people are fighting there because there are irregularities, they say, no, stop. Meanwhile, you have no capacity to protect the place and prevent it, and so people are plundering it. So it's a good thing that has been lifted, and Dele Alake must be commended for that. The second thing is that some of the issues include pollution of the environment, lead poisoning, and the fact that the ignorant communities are brought on. The people are used, they don't know they're being endangered. So reopening it, I imagine, will mean that some of these things have been taken into account. The third point is that the bandits are not going to start clapping for the federal government right now. They'll be very angry with the president. They'll be very angry with Dele Alake. They'll be very angry with the head of miners, who is on air right now with me, because what they see is a displacement that's about to take place. So part of the energy is if I'm among the criminals, which I'm not, just for the record, part of what will concern me is to find out the capacity of the amount of security they are putting around anybody and how easily we can take it out. And they may want to set an example by striking where nobody expects they would. This matter is more serious than we are talking about. He has given the example of a bandit leader who was caught with over 100 tons of gold. Now, 2014, I was in Zamfara. It was part of a program of the Nigerian National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. We went on a study tour, and we went to Bukuyum. Bukuyum is, if you like, the headquarters of mining in Nigeria. There was no ban at the time, but the amount of grinding poverty in that place was incomprehensible to me. Even though we are received at the local government headquarters officially with a chairman and everything, at the time we had, a break, we were talking, hungry children raided, who had been surrounding the building, raided the food, where the food was set for us to eat. Now, if you look at the level of poverty in the mining communities, the degree of illiteracy, and what seems to me, or at least seemed to me then, elite indifference, the issues are more serious now than ever, because you've let the place fallow for 5 years. Weed has taken over where there used to be plant. The plants include my friend on TV, properly recognized and documented miners. Those are the plants for which that farm exists. Now you drove away, you removed all those plants that can be used for food, that can deliver, and you allowed weed. Not even that you chose any type of weed could grow. So you find that insecurity in Zamfara became a contest between different armed groups mining gold. And it's not about kidnapping, it's not about all of that. So now that's the crisis on the table. And what I see is a situation that the government has to be sure it can be managed. First, the amount of training given to the, mining guards.
Yes.
The amount of arms and ammunition, the kind of logistical support they have. I believe that whatever they're doing there, they should make sure they secure high-caliber drones also to help with surveillance, because those boys on the ground, that will not be enough to protect anybody.
I'm going to get back to this conversation right now, because there were plans by the Buhari administration at the time to help these artisanal, informal miners, if you'd like to call them that. But we do have some breaking news right now, and that's something that we have to talk about. The University of Abuja professors are protesting the process of selecting the vice chancellor of the institute. That's going on right now. Now, it's pertinent to note, and this is why we are putting this out there, the channel's crew covering the protest were manhandled, and the crew bus was vandalized by security operatives in the school after detaining them for over an hour. Now, you recall that the university has been embroiled in a deep crisis over the process of appointing a new vice chancellor following the exit of Professor Abdul Rashid Naala on July the 1st. And also, just so we remember that the heart of the dispute there at the University of Abuja, allegations that the new governing council, in collaboration with certain members of staff, are attempting to install Professor Aisha Mekudi, despite what they say is her alleged ineligibility under the advertised criteria. So that's happening right now.
Well, that's not new.
Yeah, that's happening right now. You may want to be able to yes, ground this situation for us a little bit.
Yes, I mean, a few weeks ago, you had it in Nadia Azikiwe University,
yes,
where the vice chancellor, it took the president to finally sack him. It's exactly the same circumstance. Some were speaking of him being ineligible and processes being violated. The governing council was said to have been confiscated by some group. And so they tried to impose him. The school where he said he got a professorship from wrote in, at least as far as we know, to say it's not true. So eventually he was removed. But even after he was removed, he gave a press briefing that no, he wouldn't go away and all of that. Now, what's playing out is actually a revised standard version. What's playing out at the University of Abuja? It's objectionable that the security men should handle media people. It only damages the image of government. And people will get the impression that, oh, it's the president that sent them to beat, because everything reverberates and goes back to the government. But the substantive final point I'd like to make on this crisis, on this emerging issue, is that the university system has also fallen victim to the decay in every other aspect of our national life. Academic excellence is no longer the issue. Gangs can now come together and determine who they want. Sometimes the debate is about indigenship, not even eligibility. Yeah. And you find that if you look through into it, ask yourself, in the last 30 years, how many universities are able to retain their best graduating students? That's the academic fee stock for lecturers. Now, better paying sectors of the economy have drawn away some of the best. Third-rate and second-rate scholars, some of them crawling about for years until they can get. Ordinary people who have been screened out and not allowed to go for a PhD holder. Some of them are professors. And therefore, somebody who never saw an A paper is determining so many things. That's part of the crisis. That's why somebody could collect money and pass somebody because he never really worked to get an A paper. Now you can see the denouement. That's the peak of the crisis. Today you're talking about University of Abuja. It's all going on everywhere to varying degrees. But fortunately, some universities are not allowing themselves to go under in that regard. So 2 issues here. The disgraceful thing going on in the university itself. Yes. And then the unacceptable conduct of the security personnel. It's not right.
I mean, this is a developing story, and of course we'll bring you more details as they unfold, but just so you know that is happening right now at the University of Abuja. I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Sani Abdullahi. The guards that have been detailed to protect minors, are you confident in their ability to protect you from terrorist organizations, even emerging terrorist organizations that may want to set an example? Because like Prof said here, they will not be smiling at the lifting of this ban.
Yeah, the lifting of the ban may not be favorable to the armed bandit and other criminal elements who are illegally mining the mineral resources in Zamfara state. But the martial police and other conventional securities, even the forest guard, I think will help in curtailing the menace of this criminal element in the mining community. So the bandit may be trying to launch some attacks or havoc to mining operators, but I know government is trying to do everything humanly possible to use artificial intelligence gathering and other technological ways in fighting this criminal ambadi in their heart.
Mr. Sani Abdullahi,
So
were you at the event yesterday when the Minister of State for Defense announced the lifting of the ban? Were you there?
No, I was not in the event.
Okay. Because one of the things that I noticed in the video was I didn't see the Governor Dauda Lawal, because you would think that this is something that he would spearhead. Do you have any idea where he stands on this lifting of the ban?
So you see, the Governor Lawal will welcome development because, the issuance of a license lies within the ambit of the powers of the federal government. Issuance of license on all solid minerals are under exclusive list constitutionally. So it is the powers of the federal government to give license to minor operators. And the minor operators are also to pay royalties to the federal government, not to the state government. So, but the governor is the chief host. And the governor will welcome the development because of the job creation which is involved in the mining activities. And also it helps in fighting poverty and also all those sites which were taken over by illegal miners. With the return of the licensed miners to operate in their mining site, I think some of these bandits will now have to leave if the mining site is fully secured. So the other level will welcome the development and will be in the same page with the federal government and also the Minister of State for Defense.
I mean, I want to ask you one more question before I come back to Prof here. What happened to PAGMI? There was something during the Buhari administration called PAGMI, the Artisanal Gold Miners Initiative, Presidential Artisanal Gold Miners Initiative. It was supposed to gather a lot of these informal miners, and then tell them, look, you don't have to smuggle the gold out. You can sell it to the government. And I remember then they kept showing us bars of gold. And they said this gold is going to be stored in the CBN. It was given to us by artisanal gold miners, as part of the efforts to regularize the mining sector in Zamfara state. What happened with that initiative? Does it still exist?
Yeah, the presidential, it's called Presidential Artisanal Miners Goal Initiative, PAGMI.
PAGMI, yes.
So, yeah, it was establishment of the previous administration of Muhammadu Buhari. And you know, government is continuum. So the responsibility of going on with the program, it has been lies under the Solid Minerals Development Funds. And Solid Minerals Development Funds is a establishment of the Act of National Assembly under Mining Regulation Act 2007, Section 34, 35, and 36 have clearly spelled out the function and duties of the Solid Mineral Development Funds. Now with this administration, you know, it was the creation of the last administration in collaboration with the Central Bank and the Bankers Committee and Solid Mineral Development Fund. Now the Executive Secretary of Solid Mineral Development Fund is the one who is acting as the chairman of the PAGMI at the same time the Secretary of PAGMI. Last administration, the Chief of Staff, the Mr. President, that is Ibrahim Gambari, who was the chairman of PAGMI. The vice chairman of PAGMI is the former governor of Kebbi State, Abubakar Atiku. Well, the Fatima Umaru Shinkafi is the secretary of the PAGMI. So now the present administration is trying to repackage the PAGMI. It's not an agency. It's a government initiative to give room for, instead of this gold which is being exported illegally. And so the informal miners and even the formal miners will now easily sell this gold to Solid Mineral Development Fund and also be taken to Central Bank for safekeeping. So instead of keeping dollars,
let's keep gold.
The central, yes, they keep gold bar.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to you for your final thoughts in a bit, Mr. Sani Abdullahi. But Prof.
Yeah.
So listening to him, he seems very optimistic and seems, you know, excited about the whole situation. There are two things I'm a little worried about: the buy-in of the governor, because he wasn't at that event of yesterday, and we do know about the history between him and Minister of State for Defense. It's not a secret. And then, of course, the security. The situation actually dovetailed into where you couldn't even drive past. You know, Zamfara, you can't travel at particular times of the day because they'll say, even till now, they'll tell you illegal mining is going on in some parts of the state. You can't travel here. You have to wait till 10 a.m. before you can pass parts of that state. With that dynamic, he says things have gotten better. You know, should we be optimistic that we won't be hearing all of these stories from Zamfara State and situate that with the fact that there's a new terrorist group?
I'll begin with that of the governor not being present. I am not sure one is in a position to know why. The life of a governor is a complicated one. Even if you have a program planned and you're told you're needed in Abuja, you come into Abuja expecting you go back the next day. If there's not enough space in the presidency due to exigencies, you may stay here for 3 days. So I wouldn't want to assume that whatever tiff may be between him and his predecessor is the reason why he's not there or he wasn't there. And also, I would want to assume that the minister coming is representing both his boss and probably the president. I'm not aware there was no government functionary. That would have been an issue. That's Zamfara State. So I would rather not have that on the table. Concerning the security, concerning the artisanal miners, these are people who are mining illegally. And the government felt, look, instead of allowing them to just carry on, why don't you bring them into the basket? Or the question I ask is there a difference between criminality and propriety? If you're going to be that PAGMI thing, is it for a period of time? In other words, okay, we have given you this grace period of free passage. In the next 3 months, 6 months, or 8 months, let all artisanal miners be seen to be aligned to people like my friend on the other side of the screen. After those 6 months, if this hasn't happened, you'll be picked up as a criminal. You say they call them informal miners, but they're illegal miners. Otherwise, why would I want to formalize my own? Is what I declare that you'll accept. So I'd rather be an artisanal miner. So that initiative, not minding the intentions, My thinking, and I may be totally mistaken, I'm not a miner, my thinking is that it should be collapsed, probably within the next 6 months. Artisanal miners, fine. And the next 6 months, please show affiliation to recognize and formalize miners. Just like you open a medicine store, you must have a pharmacist who is seen to be the owner of the store and who's in premature will validate what you're doing. But on the security thing, no, I don't share that optimism, because there's whether you call them forest guards, yes, well, three things. What kind of training did they have?
Yes.
What kind of equipment did they have? What's the level of commitment, among so many other things?
We have, unfortunately, run out of time, Prof. But I want to thank you very much, Professor Ikechukwu, Executive Director of Development Specs Academy, for being with us. Thank you very much this morning. And Mr. Sani Abdullahi, live from Zamfara, thank you very much. The Chairman, Miners Association of Nigeria, Zamfara State. Thank you again for being with us on the program.
Thank you.
And as we close, just so we can remember that breaking news, we think we have a video that we can show you of our car, the Channels TV car, being vandalized at the University of Abuja while that protest is ongoing. We hope everybody is safe and that the right things are done at the right time. Thank you all very much for being with us on Sunrise Daily. Have a great day ahead. Merry Christmas. We'll be here tomorrow again on the program. I'm Kayla Megwa. Have a great day ahead.